thank you for showing up this morning. I know this Saturday morning, a lot of things you guys could be doing outside of being here listening to a bunch of politicians speaking, so thanks for coming. Also want to thank Tony and the Americans for Prosperities for showing up. They, I don't know if you looked at it, but you open it up, you go down there and you find Michael Williams. There's check marks all the way across. I was voted or identified as 100% voting record and the most conservative state senator currently serving in the state Senate. I was really surprised when that came out. In fact, I called up Josh McCoon. I was like, Josh, can you believe I beat you? No, but it's a pleasure to be here. What I thought I would do today is just real briefly answer two questions that I get the most as I've traveled this state of Georgia campaigning. The first one is, Michael, you seem like a nice guy. You seem like you have a good head on your shoulders, but how are you going to beat the establishment? How are you going to beat a guy that's been in office since he was 28 years old? How are you going to beat a guy that's been in office for over almost a quarter century? Like I kind of talked through it, and they said, okay, you've got a lot of good ideas as well, but how are you going to implement them? You see the challenges that Donald Trump has. How are you actually going to fulfill some of the campaign promises that you're making to everybody? Well, I'd like to just kind of share a couple of personal stories with you guys. The first one was, I just turned 7 years old. It was right before Christmas, and I woke up one morning. My mom was sitting on the couch with my grandma, her mom, and my dad was noticeably absent. The night before, he had actually tried to kill all of us. He served in Vietnam. He came back and he was diagnosed with manic depressive bipolar disorder, and I believe he also had a severe case of PTSD. We spent that Christmas in a mental home visiting my dad, and for the next 8 years, my life was extremely chaotic. That wasn't the last time he tried to do that. There were several other instances, and there were some days I'd come home from school and my dad would be in his underwear, ringing this little bell, singing "Life's a Joke." Other times I'd come home and find him in the closet, in the fetal position, scared, thinking somebody was out to get him. Somebody was going to harm him. Thankfully, my mom was there time in and time out to be there to protect us, protect my dad. When I was 14, though, I went off to a church camp. It was several hundred miles away, and my mom took me. And while I was gone, my dad took his own life. She came home and she found my father at the bottom of the stairs with a picture of our family in one hand and a suicide note laying on the table. I went through the pains of grief, guilt, many of the struggles that you might imagine a 14-year-old who had just lost her father to suicide would go through. I remember my senior year in high school, it was my third high school. I went to a very, very small school. There was only 20 people in my graduating class. I'm a big kid, so I was kind of forced to play all the sports, whether I was good at it or not. And we got a new track coach, and he saw me and he said, "Michael, you need to run the 300-meter hurdles." If anybody knows anything about track, that's a very, very difficult race to run. And he just saw my long legs and thought I could do it. And again, small school, very limited resources. We didn't even have a track. We had a cow pasture that I would run around in, and we didn't have all the hurdles that you need. We only had 3 hurdles. So my practice was running over these 3 hurdles and then running around the cow pasture to get conditioning. So at my first track meet, I show up and I see something that I had never seen before in my life, and that is a track full of hurdles. I line up, the gun goes off, and I take off. And those first 3 hurdles, pass them, jump over them, no problem. We're neck and neck. That 4th one, though, my left leg caught it, and bam, I fell flat on my face. The 5th one, 6th one, same thing. By now, I'm alone on this track field, embarrassed, humiliated. Want nothing but just to go run and hide somewhere and avoid all the embarrassment. But before that thought leaves my mind, those hurdles, they transform. They're no longer hurdles made of metal and plastic. They're made of the heartache, the pain, the struggles that I've endured the 17 years of life. So I got up and I finished that race. And I still knocked over every single one of the remaining hurdles. But I finished. There's nobody there patting me on the back, no one there saying, great job. There was no standing ovation when I crossed the finish line. I went, and I sat in isolation up in the bleachers. I remember thinking, in the words of William Ernest Henley in his poem Invictus, that I was the master of my fate, the captain of my soul, and that there was nothing that I could not do if I did not set my heart and my mind to overcoming. And that story, that experience has really helped to fuel my drive and fuel my passion, the various things that I do. And particularly, there was one instance, one of many instances where the government has tried to take away my liberties and my rights. To give you a little backstory on it, I owned 18 Sport Clips haircuts locations here in Georgia as well as in Alabama, 160 employees. And the very first store that I bought was an existing store. It was an underperforming store, and I went and I bought it, paid about $150,000 for it. And I was going to keep the manager, and I wanted to do an object lesson. I wanted to actually put $150,000 in cash in front of her and say, this is what I am pretty much giving you, this store, and how are you going to manage it and take care of it? So I go to the bank. I said, I need $150,000 in cash. You can imagine their look. They're like, well, we can't do that. We can't give you that. I'm like, well, why? It's like, well, we have to get an armed truck service. We have to do all this, so we can, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. Well, okay, well, how much can you give me? Well, we can't tell you that. Okay, well, can you give me $100,000? No, we really can't give you $100,000. What about $50,000? No, I can't really give you $50,000. Can you give me $5,000? Like, sure. So they give me $5,000. I go to another branch. Same thing. This time I try to get $10,000. I get it, but I have to fill out a bunch of paperwork. So I go around all these different branches, eventually get my $150,000, sit down, have the object lesson, go back to the bank, deposit $150,000 in cash, and they actually charge me to take the $150,000. 4 years later, 2008, I need another large sum of cash. And knowing what I know, I go around all these banks, take money out, and then deposit it back in the bank. The next year, 2009, I get a letter from the IRS. I am being audited for the years 2007 and 2008. I bring them into my office, let them go through, I give them access to my bank statements, financials, everything they need I give them access to. They're in there for about a week, then they say, okay, we also need to audit your mom. They go and they talk to my mom, and I kind of walk them through that. Don't hear anything back from them for a while. 6 months after that, I get a phone call from the U.S. Treasury Department. They bring me down to their field office. They start asking me questions about the withdrawals and deposits that I made. And I explained it to them. And they said, well, you know what? We think you committed a felony. It's called structuring. And it's sentenciable up to 10 years in prison. I was like, well, wait a minute. I didn't do anything wrong. It was my money. The audit kind of shows that. Why are you doing this to me? Well, we talked through it for a little bit. After about an hour of going through it, he said, well, look, we're just going to kind of take this back to my superiors, and we'll let you know what's going on. So how long do I have to wait to figure out if you guys are going to charge me? He said, well, give me 6 months. 6 months goes by. A year goes by. A year and a half goes by. I get a call again from this U.S. Treasury agent. Some follow-up questions based upon the audit. I answer them all and say, okay, well, we'll get back with you. Another year goes by. They call me up and they say, we need you to come to the field office and you need to bring an attorney because we are going to prosecute you. I show up with my attorney. They pretty much tell me, look, we're going to prosecute you and you can go to jail for 10 years, or you can sign this plea deal and you only go to jail for 2 years and you might get out for 18 months on good behavior. I went back and forth about why I don't think I committed a felony. There's nothing I did wrong. I leave, sit down, talk to my attorney. I call them back and say, we're going to fight this thing. They're mad. They're upset. They say, okay, if you do this, we're going to throw the book at you. In fact, we're going to not just throw it at you. We're going to go after everybody that's been involved in your business, your family, everybody. I say, bring it on. I had a really good attorney. We went to, what's it called? What's it called, Josh, grand jury. The grand jury. And we just saw the whole grand jury deal with Paul Manafort and all that. You know, they'll indict a ham sandwich. It's very, very easy to get an indictment out of a grand jury. My attorney, though, convinces the prosecuting attorney to just at least give them a little bit of our case, a little bit side of our case as they're presenting to the grand jury. The grand jury comes back with what's called a no bill. they find me completely innocent of any and all wrongdoing. I was excited. I was happy. What do you think the U.S. Treasury Department felt? They were mad. They wanted vindication. Not a month later, I get a letter in the mail from the IRS that says I owe them over $1 million. $1 million. We go back and forth fighting this thing. Again, one of the years was 2007. They say, look, statute of limitations says run out. If you waive your right, statute of limitations, we won't prosecute you on fraud. So no, I'm not going to waive any right that I have. You're going to have to prove every single case against me. They come back and they say, okay, well, if you agree to 2008, we'll just make 2007 go away. I was like, no, we are going to fight this tooth and nail. So finally, we have our meeting with the IRS agent right before we go to court. And I'm sitting down with my attorneys. And I'm a CPA. I've got everything itemized line by line. I can prove every single cent that I spent. And I've got it stacked about this high. I'm sitting down with my attorneys saying, look, we're going to have this meeting. And whenever we're done and we walk out of there, I'm not going to owe the IRS a single dime. The guys are like, the attorney's like, well, look, man, we've been doing this for 30 years. We've never seen the IRS walk away from $1 million alleged liability. It's not going to happen. Went back and forth time and time again. We're done. I'm going to walk out of there not owing a dime. Finally, my attorney's just frustrated with me. They said, fine, Michael, you think you're not going to owe a dime. Okay, can we move on? I'm like, no, I need you to say that we're not going to owe a dime. So they finally say it. We have that meeting with the IRS agent. We're going through everything. By the end of it, he kind of leans back in his chair, looks at all the paperwork that we have. He says, you know what? I don't think you have a tax liability. I said, you're exactly right. I don't owe you a dime. We leave, we're walking out to the car. One of the attorneys kind of has this dumbfounded look on his face, shaking his head. He says, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. He looks over at me and says, Michael, how did you do it? Basically, the questions that I'm being asked is, Michael, how are you going to do that which most people think is impossible? How are you going to accomplish what most people think can't be done? What I've learned in my 42, 43 years of life is that there's two main things that stop people. One is the naysayers out there, the people that tell you time and time again, it can't be done. It's not the way we do things around here. That's not how it's done. The other one, and the most important one to me, is fear. People are scared to be different. People are scared to stand up. People are scared of the embarrassment that might come with losing. Let me tell you a little bit about me. I lost my father when I was 14. I nearly lost my son. He laid on death's bed for 9 days. The government tried to take away my liberties and my rights. I'm not scared of any of that. What I am scared of is sitting back and doing absolutely nothing as I watch our country being torn apart, as I watch our Constitution being ripped to shreds and trampled all over again, as I watch candidates come up here, make promises after promises after promises, only to get elected and not do a damn thing. That is what keeps me up at night. As I look at this governor's race, and we hear all the campaign promises being spoken, some of the great speeches that they like to give. One of the ones that just kind of makes me chuckle is their support for our president and our Constitution. Well, where were they when our president was running for office? Not a single one of them came out in support, not even after he was the nominee. I was the first elected official that took it on the chin in September of 2015 to come out and support Donald Trump. Since he's been the president, when a teacher in Cherokee County kicked out 2 of her students for wearing the shirt, "Make America Great Again." Where were they then? They were out giving great campaign speeches about how much they support the president. You know where I was? I demanded that the school board fire that teacher immediately. Because we all know, had that teacher kicked out somebody for an Obama shirt, she'd been fired. The school board, they met. They didn't even take up the issue. So we came back, we doubled down. We said, you fire her or we're going to do a protest. How do you think that was received? The media, the left, they thought I was horrific. Thought I was a horrible person. Even members of our own conservative Republican Party, elected officials that if they were standing up here right now, you would think they were conservative. They called me and begged me not to do it. Why? Because of the proximity to the high school. We all believe in our freedoms. We all believe in supporting the president until it becomes uncomfortable for us. Then we back down a little bit. We had that protest. It was a peaceful protest. You know what even makes me even more mad is the reason they didn't want me to have this protest wasn't because they were scared of what I might do or what our supporters might do. We're just a bunch of old people holding up signs. They were scared of the left coming. They were scared of the anti-protesters. They were wanting to silence our voice because of the fear they had of what others were going to do. We said, no, no, no. We went, we showed up. A day before the next meeting for the Board of Education members, the Board of Education meeting, we sent out an email. So we're going to do this again unless you fire the teacher. Not 6 hours after that email goes out, the teacher resigns. That's how I support our president. Our Second Amendment rights. You listen to any of the candidates, they're going to be the biggest advocate for our Second Amendment rights. I was the fourth of the four candidates to announce. I came out hot and heavy on constitutional carry. Huge support of constitutional carry. It's in our literature. We did videos for it. None of the other candidates would even talk about it. In fact, one of them was asked, and he kind of dodged the question a little bit. Since then, they've all decided they're going to support constitutional carry. What about when Nancy Pelosi tried to use the horrific massacre that happened in Las Vegas? She came out and she said that she hopes that discussion about banning bump stocks leads to further gun control, basically taking away our Second Amendment right. Where were the other candidates when this was going on? Again, they were out giving great, wonderful speeches. You know where I was? I said, Nancy Pelosi, no, no, no. You're not going to take away our Second Amendment rights. In fact, I am going to give away a bump stock. Again, how do you think that was received? The left, the media, they came out and they attacked me like I've never been attacked before. My wife received a death threat via Facebook. Even on, again, some conservatives. I get phone calls. Now, I'm a conservative, but there's no way I'm going to vote for you, Michael, because I'm going to take a position and defend our Second Amendment rights. I took the heat. I took the batting. A couple days later, after the heat kind of died down, the AJC, they do an article about banning bump stocks. They ask all the candidates, what's your position? Well, now it's easy. Now it's kind of an easy thing. And they agree with me that we should not ban bump stocks. But again, where were they? That's the kind of leader that I'm going to be. I might not be able to give the best speeches, have the best punchlines, but I'm going to go out there. I'm going to fight for our rights. I'm going to fight for our liberties, tooth and nail. I appreciate you guys being out here. I appreciate the Republican Party and everything that y'all do. And I ask for your support and for your vote. And if you like what I've said, visit williamsgeorgia.com and sign up. And I too will be around until everybody's gone, answer any questions you might have. So thank you so much.